Parish orphans and retrogrades, happy Friday afternoon. Friday, October the 25th. Next week will be the last week of October, one of my favorite times of the year. Halloween. And the Halloween tide Triduum begins next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 31st, 1st, 2nd, favorite time of the year. And the Synod finishes up before then, finishes up late this week. I mean, including the weekend. So I thought it appropriate to chill out for a second yesterday and to give you guys some flavor what has happened at the Synod on Synodality this week, late week, all in one fell swoop. Make sure that no extra news creeped out of the Synod today. You know, now it's whatever time. It's 6 my time. If you're in California, it's 4 your time. If you're in Mountain Time, it's 5. If you're in the East Coast, it's 7. But it is not, absolutely not, time where in Rome it's 1:02 a.m. and it's the next day. So we don't have to worry about extra news. So let's get right down to it after this. First, I want to remind you, support this channel if you're willing to, please, on Locals. I got kicked off of Patreon for telling the truth. Locals is where you can support me. We have tons of stuff happening every week. I give you behind-the-scenes updates on the weekend. You have a Lord of the Rings trilogy book club you have access to every Wednesday. You get other cool stuff. Support me at Rules for Retrogrades on Locals. Get free books, signed stuff. I really appreciate it. If you're not willing to do that, just like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to reach that goal of 100K subscribers. I've been in it for a while. It's a very unique kind of YouTube channel. We have a very unique subscribership. Become one of them today. Finally, if you want to support the channel, we do marital coaching. This is the newest thing that I offer together with Steph, my wife. We do 2x2 marital coaching. Go to timothyjgordon.com. See if marriage coaching is right for you today. We teach you how to be a patriarchal home and not a feminist home. We're mostly through our first round of the new marriage coach, the Leave and Cleave course, on the Leave and Cleave book, the marital workshop. That went so well. We have 2 more weeks left of that. You can sign up on timothyjgordon.com today, and you can, of course, see all the past classes. We're supporting this book, which is the textbook, Leave and Cleave, How to Build a Patriarchal Home. That's what this channel has become. We got 4 pillars on the channel, but the first pillar is patriarchy. I'm the godfather of the online patriarchy revival, and now it's really caught. It's caught in the Catholic world. And even normies are saying patriarchy, patriarchy. It all began with my book, The Case for Patriarchy, which I announced on Matt Fradd's show over 5 years ago. So support the channel. The election's in basically a week and a half. I can't believe that. Support yourself by getting from your blue state to a red state sometime between November and January. It's going to be crazy stuff happening. We haven't seen tons that's crazy happen. 3 assassination attempts on the ex-president. That's pretty crazy. But aside from that, no October surprise. It's coming. Might be a November surprise. Get from your blue state, get to a red state today. If you're a conservative, if you're a Christian, you should not live in a blue state. realestateforlife.org. Do what I did. I got from the bluest of the blue to the reddest of the red. realestateforlife.org. Tell them Tin sent you. Okay, so first things first, I just want to address Delexit Nos, Francis's 4th encyclical, which was published yesterday, about 36 hours ago, a little less. And people are debating, hey, this is Francis. Pretty much most of what he does is subversive by its design and by its manufacture. Is this subversive? Well, I haven't read the whole thing. I checked out a few of the places where people were saying it was heretical. Now, it does quote the Talmud, and you know, parish orphans and retrogrades, I'm no fan of the Talmud, but people were saying it cites the Talmud like as in a matter of faith or morals. It does not. Francis cites the Talmud to discuss Jewish practice, which is fine. That's like citing the Quran to cite Muslim practice. You know, I'm not afraid to critique Pope Francis. Not at all. It's just, that was the big critique that everyone was going crazy about online. And it's soft peddling Talmudic stuff as if it's friendly to Christianity, which it's not, but that's not, which I don't like, but it's not citing the authority of the Talmud as if it's legitimate Catholic or even Christian authority. That's nonsense. People are saying that. I couldn't disagree more. And I mean, that's about the extent of what I had to say. I'm sure he cited it because he's soft peddling it. It's thin Talmud, pushing as opposed to thick magisterial Talmud endorsement. So I wouldn't freak out about it. I haven't read the whole thing. I do trust Anthony Stein. He seemed to have an anti approach, and that's always the smart approach, honestly, with Francis these days, is to not. So I'm just saying that main snafu that seemed to be presented by Dilexit Nos. We checked it out this morning. It's fine. So don't worry about that. We'll report more as it comes in. So that happened yesterday as a kind of synodal event, and not presented on the proper feast day. My friend Ryan pointed that out. Presented on the proper feast day. Some are speculating, well, why not present this on the feast day it pertains to? Does that mean they don't expect Francis to live that long? Some are speculating it. I don't know. It doesn't sound crazy. I don't know. Now, speaking of Francis, one of the many doctrinal chiefs that he has had and fired was Cardinal Gerhard Mueller. Today, at Pax Liturgica conference, which is sort of synod within the synod, he says, we are obliged to fight for orthodoxy in the church. And I say this because there are some cardinals here in Rome who think the Pope can do what he wants. That's reported by Michael Haynes earlier. This is the first small thing I have to report to you, parish orphans and retrogrades, that you might overlook that's bigger than you think. Here's what you might miss if you hadn't tuned into Rules for Retrogrades today. The Synod on Synodality is nominally, purportedly, putatively, self-consciously, it stands for the proposition that the church is too autocratic, the church needs to be democratized, Roman Catholicism should be synodal, which means more egalitarian, at least between and among prelates. And Francis pays lip service to synodalism. You need to be more synodal when you're synoding your synodal buddy. Synodistically. So you'd think, well, Francis is a lefty, they like egalitarianism and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and social contract, even within the hierarchy of the church. Well, you'd be wrong. And you're not wrong because Francis says otherwise. You're wrong because Francis does otherwise. Francis's pontificate has been marked by doublespeak. When he says he wants the church to be more democratic, he means anything but this. He is, remember, as the author Henry Cyr made it clear, the dictator pope. The most dictatorial pope that we've had in Rome in the 21st or the 20th century. There is no one who comes close to autocratic, a truly imperious, officious, autocratic temperament than Pope Francis I. It is a climate of fear among centrist, right-wingers, and even centrist cardinals who live in Rome. He is, basically kicked Cardinal Burke out of his home, and he kind of half undid that. Made a joke about Cardinal Burke when he was sick. Somehow the nose of Cardinal Pell was broken, the corpse's nose. And there seems to be a backstory on that beggars that we look into the role that the Vatican might have played in that, in the future. Not right now, during Francis's life. Francis once passed out at the first synod, the Synod on the Family in 2014. He passed out with rage at dinner while screaming at the cardinals, and he said, "I shall have the red hat of Burke." And he demoted Mueller, and he demoted Burke. And there's Mueller who's been kind of quiet, and Joaquin Meisner was a cardinal who's since passed on. I'm not saying anyone killed him. And Cardinal Cafaro was the final dubia cardinal. He's since passed on. I'm not saying anyone killed him. I don't know. But they were treated really poorly and ignored, stonewalled, after issuing those dubia in 2017 or 2018. I'm forgetting now. Time flies. The point is, it's nonsense. He will never give up power, even though he's joked about giving up power all the time. Said, hey, maybe I'll do a bending, absconding. No, he will not, because he is a true believing leftist. They do not give up power. They do not ever, contrary to the rhetoric of Trotsky and Stalin and Lenin, they never give up power. They only aggrandize their power through the use of the rhetoric of egalitarianism. And that's what the synodalism has been about. Now, the synodalism makes him, to idiots that can't tell, look like he wants to be democratic and self-effacing and self-immolating and self-diminishing. He's not that at all. He's the most tyrannical pope we've had in a long time. But while it does that, which is good PR, as they say now, corporate culture has taken everything over in this ruined country. It's good PR. What it has afforded, while it's made Francis look good, is the opportunity to pin the revolutionary, subversive, toxic ideologies they're trying to make into a reality at these synods on the German synodal way and other radicals, and get them pushed through. So Francis gets to, by being an autocrat who appeals to egalitarianism, he gets to get his agenda accomplished, the radical, subversive German synodal ways agenda, push it on other people, and himself look better to the people that can't tell any better, don't know any better. And, okay, having laid that groundwork, now go back to Cardinal Mueller. We're obliged to fight for orthodoxy in the church. I say this because there are some cardinals here in Rome who think the Pope can do what he wants. Mueller, who kind of always speaks in riddle, says just what I said in fewer words and with less specificity. What do you mean he can do what he wants? Meaning, this synod is all about women deacons, and the Pope can do what he wants, even though he ought to be considered bound by earlier popes. And the cardinals are saying that, but is Francis the humble, Francis the wise, Francis the merciful, going to efface that power and say, no. I have a big cheering section among these Germans, these Belgians, these Swiss, these Northern French, these Austrians. They want me to do some radical shit, and I'm not going to do it. No, Francis will not do that. He just will strike once after letting his enemies and friends alike prefigure what they think he will do and what his friends know he will do for years. We've been talking about women deacons since the Amazon Synod. So Mueller knows something's coming down the pike in this final doc, which I guess the final synod doc will be finalized tomorrow, according to the timeline they laid out earlier in the week. And Mueller knows it's going to be trouble. That's it. It's going to be trouble. So that's why he's getting out in front of this thing. That's why one bothers to get out in front of things. And just come to terms with the irony entailed by what he said. It's called the Synod on Synodalistic Synodality. Synods, my synods. And they always talk as if they're leftists, Marxian leftists. They're not. They aggrandize power, and with that aggrandized power, they become even more pyramidally untouchable. You go from the Catholic Church, rightly ordered, being a pyramid. I'm not doing the Illuminati sign. I'm making a triangle. It's a pyramid with a tippy top. To the actual Illuminati, the tippy top getting removed from the rest of the pyramid and being untouchable. That's what they're doing under the guise of saying that they're making it all a square. If to the extent that it works, it's genius, but it's built on Luciferian lies. Well, Cardinal Mueller knows better. Cardinal Mueller knows what they're doing. He's been on the business end of this thing. So never make the mistake of thinking that he doesn't. People are going to be citing the fact that I made a triangle. I'm making a triangle to denounce Masonic Luciferianism. Now, okay, here's another bit of news. Cardinal Mueller, Francis received 83-year-old Cardinal Wuerl in audience today. Remember Wuerl? Remember him? Washington, D.C.? Here's some background on Wuerl I'll read you in a second. It takes place some weeks after receiving Cardinals Tobin, Nighty-Night Baby, Supich from Chicago, McElroy. McElroy's from San Diego. He used to make the San Diego Archdiocese living hell for the conservatives. With Tobin saying they discussed the church and synodality. And now you have Wuerl, arguably the fourth big, before he kind of was shunted to the side, fourth big American cardinal / prelate. Here's the background on Wuerl from a LifeSite News article. He's disgraced. He received over $4 million from the Archdiocese of Washington since 2020, according to LifeSite News. Cardinal Wuerl continues to receive substantial payments from the D.C. Archdiocese since retiring in disgrace over his mishandling of sex abuse, though the amounts have declined following media scrutiny. Retired Archbishop of Washington, Cardinal Donald Wuerl, has received over $4 million from the Archdiocese for his continuing ministry activities since 2020. That's about $1 million a year. According to financial records published by the Archdiocese of Washington, Wuerl has continued to receive substantial payments from the Archdiocese ever since he retired from leadership. Outlining the distribution of funds received from donors, which came without donor restrictions, the Archdiocese of Washington's Central Pastoral Administration recorded the following figures for the continuing ministry activities for Archbishop Emeritus. That's what he is. Now we have Emeritus everything. 2019, about a little under 1.5 mil. 2020, a little over 2 mil. 2021, a little over, 1.8 mil, 1.85 mil. 2022, 278K. 2023, 145K. So at least it's declining. But the fact of the matter is, he's very corrupt, and he is getting paid. And Pope Francis is welcoming in to the into the fold. He received Tobin, Supich, McElroy in audience. That was what? This was a couple weeks ago that he received them. There are 3 of 11 prelates from America at the Synod. So he received them in audience a couple weeks ago. They're out there for the Synod. Tobin's a member of the Synod Ordinary Council. Supich and McElroy are personal picks of the Pope at the Synod. So, and these are all McCarrick friends, Uncle Ted, McCarrick friends. So they all very, very clearly are the biggest leftists in the American church, powerful heads. And they're all less powerful, arguably, than Uncle Ted McCarrick was at his peak of power. But they're all adjacent to him and still sort of subservient to the cause. Okay? So just don't get out in front of your skis on defending the Pope or the worst American prelates. There's nothing defensible here. He is in league with the bad guys. The good guys, even the ones that aren't strong conservatives, like Cardinal Mueller, outgoing CDF, or Cardinal Ladario, who's a little bit less conservative, the following outgoing CDF. Francis really burns through them. They're all saying that this is bad stuff happening and that the Pope is accumulating power in order to use it in ways that he shouldn't be allowed to. Interesting. All of his friends say, you know, he's just doing great stuff. Okay. Also at the Synod, here are the new members of the Ordinary Council for the General Secretary of the Synod, who will oversee implementation of Synod on synodality and the next focus of the Synod. 12 members were elected, with Pope Francis to appoint 4 more. This makes the 17th member of the group. They weren't so notable to me, the names. You know, I have a pretty good recollection for names. Only 1 or 2 of them even rang a bell. And, you know, maybe if they prove to be important, we'll do a show on it. But the point is, you know they're leftists. You know Francis only promotes company men. And they're all going to be singing that same song intoned by Cardinal Mueller. The song is, claim that the church will become more synodal and make it more into a tyrannical kind of autocracy. I mean, if you can do both at once, then that's just great work if you can get it. If you can aggrandize more power for yourself and be called humble to cry out as you strike Christians, then that's great work if you can get it. And Francis has consistently been able to do this because he's got his minions who enable him to, even in the American commentariat. I won't even mention them, the Pope splainers and stuff. So all of this points, I think, rather satisfyingly toward a call to action. If they finish the final Synod doc, which has been already disclaimed as, look, we're going new directions. I forget which liberal that was. Do you remember which liberal that was, Steph? We're going to get that tomorrow. Maybe there's something big in it. If it's big, it'll be bad. Never big and good. And they're probably pushing this deaconettes thing some. It remains to be seen. Tomorrow I think the Synod closes either tomorrow or Sunday. Let me look this up for y'all. This Synod closes on the date known as, obviously I'm looking here, when? End date. Yeah, there it is. Well, it's not actually concluding the full gathering tomorrow because they booted the end to one more session. They kept doing that, remember? But the date, I just want a date, Brohim. Yeah, we had the diocesan phase, the continental phase, and the universal phase. The universal phase began in April 2023. It was announced that 70 non-bishops, including deacons, priests, consecrated men and women, and Catholic laity, would be able to participate and vote at the assembly. Now, Mueller has said this can't be an official synod because of all the lay people participating. That also tells you he's preempting something bad really might happen, bad and big, and he might be saying, kind of feathering his nest for an all-out denial. No, this isn't even a synod. In June 23, the working document was released. The final or universal phase started on October 4th, 2023. Last October, with the Synodal Assembly taking place at the Vatican after a 3-day retreat held in Sacrofano. And of course, it It will continue in October 2024. The continental phase which is this synod, which is closing tomorrow or the next day. Continental phase was from September 2022 to March 2023, shortest phase. The diocesan phase was from October 21 to April 2022. Okay, so these are the big ideas. Let me bring you back to the preparatory document for the whole thing. In September 2021, the Vatican released a preparatory document and handbook to dioceses around the world to help them prepare for the synod. According to the document, the purpose of this synod is not to produce more documents. Rather, it is intended to inspire people to dream about the church we are called to be, to make people's hopes flourish, to stimulate trust. Very odd verb. To stimulate trust, to bind up wounds, to weave new and deeper relationships, like with the LMNOPQ group, to learn from one another, to build bridges, to enlighten minds, warm hearts, and restore strength to our hands from our common mission. And this sounds like trouble. I'm just trying to remind you. Now, there are several suggested questions. The most basic question, according to the document, how does this journeying together, which takes place today on different levels, allow the church to proclaim the gospel in accordance with the mission entrusted to her? What steps does the church invite us to take in order to grow as a synodal church? Several of the suggested questions include, to whom does our particular church need to listen to? And how are the laity, especially young people and women, listened to? So this isn't the Pope ceding power to young people or women. He's just going to do things in the name of young people and women. By young people, he means LMNOPQ, and by women, he means those dames that think that they can be deaconettes. That is that two-step thing that Mueller's pointing out. Say you're giving the power back to the people where you're actually exercising more power than even the most autocratic pope on date rightly ever had or exercised. Great move if you can do it. How do we integrate the contribution of consecrated men and women? What space is there for the voice of minorities, the discarded and the excluded? Again, LMNOPQ. Do we identify prejudices and stereotypes that hinder our listening? How do we listen to the social and cultural context in which we live? How do we listen to the world and be more like it? Okay, so that's how it all began with the preparatory documents. And yet, ancora imparo, right? I'm still looking for when this one ends. Yeah, I know it ends in October 2024. Okay, so it's Sunday, the 27th of October. Today's the 25th. So it ends on Sunday. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Let me see if there's any news for you getting out of here. I mean, there really can't be any breaking stuff that I didn't find before I came up here. How about this? The Catholic News Agency yesterday, it's a bit of speculation. It's not properly speaking news, but I like to bring you the best and the brightest analysis. So what will the final document of the Synod on synodality be like before we get out of here? Here's what CNA says in an article that was published yesterday by Andrea Gagliarducci. A year ago, at the end of the Synod on Synodality's first General Assembly, electronic versions of the draft of the confidential summary report were circulated among the media and others, as inevitably happens in the days leading up to the delegates' last amendments and final vote. This year, apparently to discourage such leaks, they've been very leak-proof this year, Synod organizers only provided participants with hard copies of the draft report, which aren't as easily disseminated. The irony is that there may not be much to share. Internally and externally over the past several weeks, the Assembly has come under intense pressure to change the Church's governing structures and even some of its basic doctrines. Theologian Miriam Widgelands, a synod consultant, emphasized that in October 23rd press briefing that Pope Francis has called for reconfiguring the church in a synodal way. Doing so would require changes to canon law to, for example, make parish or diocesan councils mandatory. Wow, that would be horrible. But bigger changes, such as opening the diaconate to women or allowing exceptions to priestly celibacy, very pro body, to cite two issues that were promoted publicly this month, appear off the table. Now, we've already told you here at Rules for Retrogrades, this is not the case. They're not actually off the table. It's doublespeak. According to sources who have spoken to CNA, what's left is a draft report that is generating disappointment in the progressive quarters, but very little buzz. All right, I kind of thought they were going to say this. I don't buy it. I don't buy that this will be a big bore. Francis does not do things only for a big bore. Whenever you get a midnight trial or a kangaroo court, a raid against you happens to each man, if you're sufficiently brave, once every 10 years or once every 20 years. One rule, we were just talking about this earlier, they want blood. They come up with some guilt. National Catholic Register ran a similar story, and this is how I know it's wrong, because they always get stuff wrong. Similar story the day before yesterday, called As Synods End Nears, Progressive Brace for Disappointment and Blame Organizers. I don't buy it. Look at this one. There's a podcast put out by America Magazine, Father James Martin, on making history at the Synod on synodality. Now, I think that's more where it's at. I think they're more about making history. Pope Francis being clearly not humility is not one of his strong suits. Everyone knows this. They want to make history. He was called to change the face of the church in the first 5 years. Remember when McCarrick said that at Villanova? Well, he's taken a much longer time, so I think he feels bad. 2 days ago, Cardinal Cerny says the legacy of Synod on synodality will be a refreshed missionary church. That's more like it. That's more like it. James Martin tweeted, "Dear friends," these boomers have to stop saying that. Bishop Barron says that too. It's the worst. Friends. Dear friends, I was so happy to be on Jesuitical Show and Inside Vatican Pod to reflect on my experience of these past 4 weeks at Synod without breaking any confidences! ! So many confidences. Also, sorry for speaking so quickly. I had a lot to say. So they're all saying, look, we haven't announced anything yet, but there will be confidences that will eventually be not broken, but just given up. And that's when they have their coming out party, like they did after the Synod on the family. They're not doing all the deaconette stuff for nothing. I promise you this. Whatever else I've ever been wrong or right about, they're not doing this all for nothing. Day 16, they were discerning the final document. A day ago, NCR said not over the hump yet. Synod delegates anxiously await the final document. And the final document doesn't really matter that much either. It's not the same thing as the post-apostolic, post-synodal apostolic exhortation. Post-synodal apostolic exhortation. So, there you go. Final document was presented on Monday, but they're going to tool it up. Wait and see what's in that. If it's anything big, you'll hear from me tomorrow on Saturday. You can count on that. We're kind of just waiting to see what's in it and what, if there's not much in it, is insinuated about when we might get the post-synodal apostolic exhortation. Stay tuned, guys. I know it hasn't been that interesting because they're not hacking away at the marble on, the buildings there in Rome. It's stripping them bare of the patrimony of the church. But rather because they're doing so under the cover of night, they're not letting really information in or out. That's why. So they want to let it out on their timetable, the way Francis did it after the Synod on the Family in April of 2016 with the release of the exhortation. Boy, I keep messing that up. Stay tuned. If there's any big clues, I'll come to you live tomorrow. In the meanwhile, remember, support this channel, support other goodly Catholic channels. We keep you pointed in the right direction. Be a patriarchal home. That's the main thing you've been hearing from us recently. Now, we have an actual trailer for the movie, What a Woman Is.
What?
It's going to be sick. It's going to be a big deal. You're going to hear about it everywhere. And it's going to be out on Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day 2025 is when this thing's going to release. It's going to be a big deal. I'll give you more details as to where it will release and all that. You're going to be excited. Valentine's Day 2025. It's getting close, and we have an official trailer. We haven't released it yet. We're looking at another couple things, but that's the news from me to you. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you're safe. God bless you all. Deus Vult.